And so I'm really excited to see young people are involved with my campaign and the way that they've engaged with the media and leveraged it. Great example is the Baltimore Student Union. They started their own Instagram. They wanted to tell their own stories rather than, having somebody else, like an adult or someone else, filter it. And I think that more broadly, people want authentic media. Because I've had talks with young people where they talk about the impact that our media has on them. So the negative portrayals of youth, um, just not truly telling their story, just cherry picking like an incident or something, but not telling of the stories of anything good that they're doing. And I think that our television is definitely like dominated by media giants that aren't deeply like rooted in the community. Like some of the best storytellers that I've seen are people from the community that aren't the most like well resourced, well funded. And so I've been thinking a lot about like how do we engage but also like have accountability for people in our community that are main like tuning into those sites all the time and actually like repeating some of the narratives that they hear on there. Because I've been frustrated, like definitely in my role, because there isn't that many alternative news sources that I know more broadly like people tune in. So I'm finding myself having to like counter a lot of narratives that are on the TV like all day long. And then it's being called accountability and transparency, but the strongest transparency and accountability that I've seen are activists that are in the community, and I don't see coverage on those sources. And part of the reason why, like when I've been in talks and in activist spaces, when they talk about doing media outreach, there is not trust with a lot of the sources that do dominate TV. So like how do we cultivate something that is accessible, that's regular, like because I think that's the other challenge is that if we have these narratives out there and they're on TV daily or on the radio daily and repeating the same thing over and over and over again, we start to internalize it. And so when I bring it back to young people, like I hear them eager to tell their own stories, reclaim their own narrative. And I think that they're going to do that through storytelling, and they definitely have way better tech skills than I did at their age. So I had an incident pretty recently where I witnessed something traumatic happen to someone. And what was interesting to me is that the bus that pulled up after the fact, the folks that got off the bus, their first instinct was to film. And I kind of like freaked out on them because I was like, this person, like their family doesn't know that this has just happened to them. Like that's a human being. Like you're live streaming on Facebook. And I personally witnessed it. So it was like jarring to see. I think like we've become very like desensitized about like the media we consume, but also when I was looking around at the people that were there, I'm like, what kind of things have we all collectively like experienced that allows us to be settled with this scene that is happening right here? And it was bad. And there's a book that I've really like kind of leaned into called My Grandmother's Hands by Resmaa Menakem that talks about racialized trauma, but also like it does it by accident, but it does talk about consuming traumatic events as a group. So like one of the things that it talks about is like in Europe, like when they would have those public, like beheadings and like just all those things, like we've become like as human beings, we've kind of like become desensitized to things. And I wonder how much of like the bad ways that we're showing up now have to do with that. But as far as like our responsibility with kids, I think as older folks, like we can definitely check in. Like even my son's 3 and I even like check in with him. I'm like, are you happy? He'll be like, and he'll think about it. You can see him think about it and he'll be like, yeah, I'm happy. Or if he's not, he'll be like, no, I'm sad. And I think just asking the question, because I think that sometimes kids spend so much time on social media that they're just like doom scrolling. And they're like, it's fine. And then they go to sleep. But witnessing, like bearing witness to things does have an impact. And I don't think that we've fully like grappled with that. Like how much like this constant churning of like traumatic images like is going to have on us long term. But I what I would see like to see too is us pass the mic and step back. Because every time that I've done that or seen people do that, like the kids just really like step into it, and they are able to rise to the occasion more than we expect. And for the other reason why I think it's really important to step back is because you want to document how you got to the place that you're at. Like I'm turning 40 today, and the thing that I constantly have been thinking about is like knowledge transfer. Like I've learned a lot through my life, like up to this point. How do I take all those lessons that I've learned and package it, give it to kids so that it's not as much of trial and error once they get to this point. So how do we link up? What does our mentorship look like to link up elders and young people to like do that knowledge transfer and really make sure that people are writing letters of recommendation and really setting up kids for success, like when they do enter the workforce, or plugging them into opportunities, and also holding other adults accountable to make opportunities for young people and allow young people to make mistakes. So I'd like to see more coaching. Clickbait is the devil. Um, yeah, because I mean, in a simpler form, it's just like people profiting off of trauma. But also, I struggle with the integrity and accountability piece in the media because we're the drivers of clickbait and viral stories. And so if like at least this is my read, I don't know that many people that are like that aren't complicit with the foolery and like you know diving into all this stuff and having that be a majority of what they engage with. So yeah, I guess I'd like to like pivot the conversation a little bit to be like, what does integrity and accountability look for like for us? Because there's so many of us, so, and if we are the drivers of that, and if we're constantly like tuning in and constantly normalizing it and constantly engaging with these media sources to tell our stories when there's an issue, because a lot of times individuals that are going through something, whether it's the school system or whatever it is, they're going to go to wherever has the most reach because they're mad. Um, I mean, I get it, but at the same time, it's like constantly giving them content. So if you remove the content, and then are more mindful of the viewership and how you engage with media sources, then is there really an industry, and is there opportunity there to then take people and plug them into something like the Baltimore Beat, or which are telling like authentic stories, or these more like grassroots efforts to not just exploit people. And then, like, as an elected person, I think that there's also an accountability piece for politicians and leaders to not normalize harmful media. Because I mean, I even remember when I ran, luckily, like the top four that were in the school board race behind the scenes, we realized that we had power and we realized that we were content. So there were some situations where someone wanted to get an interview with us and just wanted us to give yes or no answers. And we're like, no, this is more, we need to add context or else we don't participate. And collectively, we said, we're not participating. Like, we're driving the way this is going to go and how the questions are going to be asked. Like, you all don't get to tell us, like, how we can engage. And I would love to see more of that. It's very rare, especially, in political spaces or any space that has power. Because I think that a lot of us view the media as like one part of power. And when we get in that mindset, we don't show up as our best selves. So I think it really depends on how you define integrity, because like everybody's, some people will do a lot of crazy stuff that I'll like slide in their DMs and be like, what are you doing? Like that was like exploiting somebody, or that messaging was racist. And yeah, like there isn't community accountability for folks that are giving media sources content. Yeah, I feel really strongly about this one. So as accountability on myself, like normalizing rest. Like, I don't think that it's necessarily about like I don't know. I think we need to unplug more because that's what I see. Like, what even when I look at my own data usage, like I consciously last year made a decision when I realized how much TV I was watching. I was like, you know how many languages I could learn like instead of watching TV. And so I've been watching less TV, and I have an art studio, and so I've been like creating art and doing things like normalize touching grass. And also, I think that the algorithm, when it comes to social media usage, the algorithm will tell you when you're being trash. Because it's only going to suggest things to you that you're like overly engaging with. So, in a way, I'm not saying rely on the algorithm, but there's moments where it'll reflect back to me, and I'm like, oh, I need to not be doing that as much. And I do have a lot of friends too, and even young people that I've heard of that are like, oh, I'm on a social media break, don't bother me. So consuming less, but also on the point that JC made, it's like quality over quantity. So if you have a trusted news source or somewhere that you can go that is going to not just like tell you the true stories, but also make you feel good, have like a balance of stuff that they're telling, I think that not only consume it, but also look for ways to make sure that continues to exist, whether it's like donating, whether it's sharing it with somebody else. If somebody's like frustrated with like news media, be like, well, there's an alternative here. It may be a grassroots effort, but making sure that word of mouth is one thing that I think that we kind of sleep on, is that we are also great promoters of things. So if we find something that we like, drop it in a group chat, send an email. Like, I had a friend yesterday that sent me something in an email about dyslexia that really resonated with me, and I needed it that day. So yeah, I think we can use all forms of communication.